Hello gamers! I love Cyndaquil. In case this was not obvious, I made myself a Cyndaquil hat. I have a Cyndaquil hanging from my mic. I have Cyndaquil wall decorations, a life-size Cyndaquil over there. I have like the little Halloween Cyndaquil. I have plenty more Cyndaquil plushes and figures and trinkets and pins and stickers and Pokemon cards. Yes! 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 I love Cyndaquil. He is my dude. And I love him to bits and pieces. And I've also gotten into plush making. I don't really have much need for Cyndaquil plushes. As I said, I have a whole collection. But there's a certain charm in being able to make plushes of things that you're never going to be able to buy. And I was inspired by someone I saw on TikTok, and when I saw that she had patterns available, I said, I have to do this for myself. On TikTok, there is a creator called Hazel Oddities who makes Mimikyus all throughout October, and has been doing this for years. Makes various Mimikyus that instead of mimicking Pikachu are wearing a costume of different other Pokemon. And Mimikyu is like the quintessential Halloween Pokemon. It is a ghost, it's wearing a costume, and it's just freaking adorable. It's cute, and you know that it's kind of shy, and it just wants people to love it, and it's just, who doesn't love Mimikyu? And if you don't love Mimikyu, just this isn't your video. So after watching Hazel Oddities videos for years, and watching the Mimikyus every single year, wishing I could either buy one or make one, finally being in a position where I have a sewing machine, I have access to fabrics, I could just make my own plush, I was like, this is the year, it's spooky season, time to make my own Cyndaquil Mimikyu. So everything I do in this video, it is 100% the design of Hazel Oddities. I will have her link tree linked in the description. That should be able to take you to her shop as well as her Gumroad, where you can buy the pattern itself. When you buy the pattern, you get an awesome collection of like base Mimikyu as well as every single Pokemon variant that Hazel has ever made, which is awesome and perfect for me because she made Cyndaquil all the way back in 2022. So I have been wanting one of my own for so long, and we're finally making it, and we're going to add it to my collection of Cyndaquil memorabilia in honor of spooky season. So let's get into it. So first thing I did after downloading Hazel Oddities pattern and printing it out and cutting it out was transfer it onto the fabrics that I had and start cutting those out. So I started with the like yellowish beige color of the Cyndaquil first. And this pattern was nice because A, it shows the direction of the pile, the direction that like the fur on the fabric should be going, which is really nice, as well as you could print out this pattern with and without a seam allowance. Now, I prefer to cut out my patterns without a seam allowance because it allows me to use this like handy little technique where I just like rubber band two pens or pencils or whatever together so that I can just trace out everything once, and it's very quick, it's very simple, it's like brain off. It's not very accurate, like if you want to have an exact 1/4 inch seam allowance, it's not perfect, but it gets the job done. And then I go in with my rotary cutter to just make the big cuts, and then later I'll go in with scissors. I just find that this is easier on my hands. I've definitely had long crafting days in the past where I've used scissors over and over and over again, and my hands just beg for mercy by the end of it. So this just helps me have like a rotation between tools, and it saves some time. I have the rotary cutter, I might as well use it. And then we move on to the blue color of the Cyndaquil. Now, most Cyndaquil plushes that are official have a more cyan color than this one. And most of Cyndaquil's sprites, Cyndaquil is rather cyan as opposed to blue, but I grew up playing Pokemon Heart Gold version, and in that version, you have the Pokemon walking behind you all the time, and that sprite, Cyndaquil, is blue, not cyan. So in my head, Cyndaquil is blue, not cyan. I know that that's not proper, I know that that's not technically official, like basically everywhere Cyndaquil is cyan, but god, in that one place, Cyndaquil's blue. So to me, Cyndaquil's blue. That's where I saw Cyndaquil the most, and the front slot of my party to be immediately switched out to another Pokemon because I'm there fighting red with a level 100 Cyndaquil who can't really do much. But it's okay. So, using the same technique as with the yellow fabric, we are cutting out the big bits with the rotary cutter and then going on with scissors for the finer details. Just working my way through cutting out each and every pattern piece necessary to make the little Cyndaquil costume for our Mimikyu. And rinse and repeat the same thing for the black. I didn't even need to buy any more fabric for this. I bought this black to make a dragon plushie for myself, and I'm still using it up. I used it on Hornet, I used it on Dragon Plush, and now I get to use it on Mimikyu. Now, I had to go back and forth on what is the best way to trace the outline around this. I have previously used, like, silver Sharpies, but my silver Sharpies were already running out from dragging across fabric so much, which, like, really dries them out quick. So, instead I'm using these, like, fabric pencils, so, like, it gives you a really thin quote-unquote seam allowance here, but I don't really care. The goal is just have an area that I can cut out and have a line that I can follow when I'm sewing. It is a little faint. I can see it in the video, but in real life, oh man, it was like faint and kind of hard to sew up. So my recommendation is if you're working with dark fabrics, try out different ways of marking them up. See what works for you. Like, I do really like silver Sharpies, but again, they dry out really fast when you're using them on fabric, so maybe different, like, fabric chalks and stuff I should look into. I don't know, I just want to be able to use this technique with the rubber bands. It's so easy! But yeah, we cut out each of these patterns, which are essentially just for the Mimikyu itself, like the Mimikyu body. No costume pieces here, and then this little tiny bit is for the Mimikyu eyes, which are like appliques that go on the plush itself. And now that all of the pattern pieces have been cut out, it is time to begin assembling the Mimikyu, the Mimiquil, whatever it is. And I started by sewing the blue part of the head to the yellow part of the head by hand. I wasn't sure the best way to go about doing this. I feel like this would be easier if you had something like an embroidery machine to make this process a little simpler. But I don't know the best way to do this. I don't know the best way to do this by hand. I don't know the best way to do it on machine. I just know that my skills and my limitations with my sewing machine, I know that I have trouble getting, especially with a fabric like Minky, I have trouble getting more intricate designs or intricate curves with my sewing machine, and since this is a pretty intricate curve that is on display, I wanted to do it by hand so that I had better control over it, which was a pretty good idea because the first time that I went and sewed up the Cyndaquil head, I realized I put it against the back piece of fabric for the back of the head, and I realized they didn't line up at all, that I put the blue overlapping the yellow way too much, so I had to break apart all of my previous stitches and then just fix it. And so I ended up like sewing this over a couple times. This probably took me so long. I was watching Minecraft videos, like I was just trying to get this thing done because I was like, oh my gosh, let me stop with this stupid hand sewing and get to the rest of the plush. So I don't know the best way to do this, but what I ended up with was a pretty decent head for the Cyndaquil, and it looks okay, and if it doesn't look perfect, that's okay, because in canon, this is a costume. This is a costume worn by the Mimikyu when it's mimicking another Pokemon, so it's okay. So then I went to the sewing machine and tried using a zigzag stitch to sew on the eyes, and I could have messed around with this more to probably fine-tune this and maybe use some sort of stabilizer or interfacing in order to make this look better, and I ended up I don't know. I don't know exactly how to use my sewing machine for applications like this. It's one of the things that I experiment with and I'm still figuring out. I have an older machine, so it doesn't necessarily have all of the same settings of a modern machine. So I'm still learning. I end up replacing the eyes with felt eyes later down the road, but at least it gives you an idea of where the eyes are placed when the entire thing needs to go together. So once the eyes are put together, then it's time to dart the fabric. So like the pattern has a few darts, so you sew the darts first before sewing the individual pieces together. And I made one of the darts too small, so here I am ripping it out so that I can sew it again. There's a lot of trial and error. Sewing is relatively forgiving as long as you don't destroy your fabric in the process of ripping out your seams, which I've definitely done before, but you just have to be careful, and worst comes to worst, you just cut out another pattern piece if you absolutely have to. But once all of the darts are done on the front part of the face, it's rinse and repeat for the back side. And once that has been completed, then the two halves of the Cyndaquil face can be put together. And this begins the fun part. Minky is a slippery fabric when it goes hair to hair. It's just how it is. It tends to like to move a lot, so you want to make sure that your piece is well pinned or clipped together so that you minimize a lot of that movement. But otherwise, this was really simple. It was just a curve all around the outside, and I was really happy with how that head shape panned out. And now it's time to pin together the actual Mimikyu part of the Mimikyu, the black that goes underneath the costume itself. This has a lot of zigzags, a lot of zigzags. There's a few different ways to handle a zigzag, I've heard. I've heard the advice of when you get to the end of a point, to do a couple reverse stitches to ensure the strength of the point before continuing on. I have heard that when you get to a point, you need to get to a point, lift your presser foot, rotate like 90 degrees, do 1 or 2 stitches, and then rotate to the rest of your angle to get the zigzag, and that'll make a better point. I don't know what is best for durability. I don't know what's best for aesthetics. I do everything based on vibes. In case that's not obvious, I'm not the best sewer in the world. I've only been using a machine I've only had like access to a sewing machine for projects like this for the past like year-ish. So I'm brand new to a lot of this stuff, and I don't follow all of the advice I see online. I see a lot of people saying with Minky you should use a zigzag stitch. I don't. I use a straight stitch. I've not noticed any problems. But it's all trial and error. It's okay to be figuring things out. And as we're moving on here, you have to cut out a circle out of part of the Mimikyu in order to get the body part to fit into the bottom. And I was struggling to understand until I looked at the instructions and figured out that the instructions tell you how to do it. So, but once I did that and had that figured out, I set it to the side and started sewing up the costume. Now, if you are ever working on this pattern yourself, which I'm going to have linked, I'm sure, if you end up working on this pattern or any of the Mimikyu patterns yourself, I didn't realize this until I looked at the instructions. I looked at the instructions, was confused by them, and then continued on. But the first thing you do is you sew on the similar color skirt bottoms to the full piece. That makes sense. That I was in for. You cut off the bits of the seam allowance so that the zigzags actually work. But this is where I messed up. I sewed all the way down the side here. If you do this, you're not going to be able to fold inside out those last little corners. You see me being confused by this, and I'm trying to do it multiple times, and I'm like, why does this not work geometrically? Then I go, oh shoot, I gotta rip out these seams, and again, this is a process. If you can accidentally rip your fabric this way, and I ended up figuring out the best way to do that on one half of the Mimikyu, and then by the time I got to the other side, it was clean sailing. But it took a second. It was a little bit of struggle for a while. So don't make the same mistake I did. Make sure you read the directions thoroughly before each and every step so that you know what to do. The part that I was missing is that you have to actually fold up part of the Mimikyu plush like this, and so you're not sewing along the entire end just in one direction. You like switch direction and put these two pieces together like this, and you sew along the corner like that. And that's the part that I was missing. So if you follow this pattern, do that. That's what the instructions say. I just didn't understand them. But that's a me problem. It's time to get the rest of the Mimikyu sewn together. And I apologize, the angle I was filming, I thought I was going to be holding the fabric in a better place for everyone to see, but no, not really. But what I am doing here is sewing the body to the spiky bit at the base of the Mimikyu. I had that clipped in place. I'm not sure if there's a good way to do that on the machine. I'm sure there is. Again, I know my limits on the sewing machine, and if I can hand sew something and I know it's not going to take me 1,000 years, I'm gonna hand sew it. But then I turn it inside out, drape the skirt over it to see how that's looking, and we return to real time here because I was just so happy with how this looked. This is just the first time where you kind of feel it all coming together, and I was rather pumped about it, to say the least. I was rather happy. With the fit check completed, I put in some stuffing to see this Mimikyu standing up. It's at this point I decide to do something that's recommended by the pattern, to sew a circle that kind of divides the like pointy bits of the Mimikyu from the actual body so that you're not getting stuffing going into all of the little nooks and crannies of the base, making the Mimikyu hard to stand up properly. I wasn't sure if I was going to do this at first, but after putting in some stuffing and seeing how it traveled, I decided to do this. Again, this can likely be done on the sewing machine, but I did it by hand for the sake of my own comfortability, and I found that it's relatively invisible. The black thread ends up disappearing in the black minky, which makes it a really nice look. Once that was done, I once again draped the costume part over the black Mimikyu part and continued stuffing the body, then stuffed the head, and I would go back and forth between the two so that neither one was too firm for the other. I wanted the body firm enough that it would be able to support the head, but still be like a little bit floppy, because after all, this is a Mimikyu in a disguise, and the disguise can in fact break. Then, per the pattern, I sewed the costume onto the black portion of the Mimikyu, ensured once again that it was stuffed how I liked it to be stuffed, and once that was done, it was time to attach the head to the body. I'm sure there is a good way to get this pinned in place so you're having it lined up perfectly one-to-one, but I found with a lot of plush parts that I just like going for it. I just like finding any which way to hold the pieces together so that I can sew them together, and I'm happy with the result of it. And so all that was left was the snoot. And literally in the pattern, it's called snoot. The little Cyndaquil nose. I made it largely off camera because it's pretty simple, and it's a little crooked how I put it on and how I put it together, but I think it adds to the charm of being a Mimikyu costume. It adds to that homemade feel. So I just ladder stitched the snoot on the exact same way that I stitched the head to the body, trying my best to line up the colors, but again, we get a little jank over on the right there, but I don't really care. It's a costume. It's homemade. It's homemade in universe. And the final real step for the Mimikyu itself is to just attach the skirt of the costume to the Mimikyu. I think the pattern tells you to do this a little bit sooner than I decided to. It's just a nice way to finish it all up, make sure there's no open areas, make sure the costume lays how you want it to over the plush itself. And that's the sewing done. It's really just details from here. Like I said, I wasn't too happy with the eyes, so I decided to make them out of felt and sew those on, and I also sewed on the spots on its back, but that was basically it. This Mimikyu is pretty much done. all that's left is the reveal, pretty much. And that's our completed Cyndaquil Mimikyu. Mimiquil. Whatever you want to call it. I am so happy with how this turned out, and even happier to add it to my collection of Cyndaquil plushes. Though the shelf is rather full, so I think I'm going to have to put this guy next to his big, life-sized brother on the Cyndaquil shelf with the rest of my Cyndaquil memorabilia. Once again, huge shoutouts to Hazel Oddities for coming up with this pattern. If you follow Hazel on any social media, you will find that she does 31 Days of Mimikyu every October, and I fell in love with the Cyndaquil Mimikyu back when I first saw it back in 2022, so I'm so happy to have finally made it myself. If you're interested in making a Mimikyu for yourself, you can check out Hazel's Gumroad for the pattern, and if you're interested in a Mimikyu, I think that Hazel sometimes opens like made-to-order commissions, but I'm not sure if they're open right now, so make sure you check that before you try to get that from her. But nevertheless, I highly recommend that you check her content out because the Mimikyus that she makes are all absolutely adorable and the highlight of my October every single year. So with that, happy spooky season, happy Pokemon Legends ZA to those who celebrate, and I will see you all another time.